Hi everyone, hope you're well. Sorry, I did attempt to do this on Wednesday and then the whole thing didn't save and I got really angry, and so now I've calmed down and I'm going to do it again. So, I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of finishing off your scores, what's important, kind of, and things that you need to bring. So you can see here there's some music for strings. We've got first violins, second violins, violas, cellos. There's a double bass on this because I was recording an orchestra, but just remember you don't have a double bass. You only have these four instruments here. So have a look up and down this page and you might think, well, it's pretty, it's pretty neat, it's pretty clear, all the notes are there. But I've purposely taken out a lot of information that should be here but isn't here. So the first thing I want you to do is just have a think, just for 30 seconds, maybe, pause the video if you want to, about what is missing from this picture that I should have, but I don't have. What elements that are really important. So yeah, pause it if you need to. I'm going to load up the finished version and we'll have a look at those things that aren't here but should be here. So yeah, think about that now. Whilst I don't even know where this is. Let's do it this way. Yeah. Sorry, it took me a second to find that. Okay, so here, I'll just zoom out a tiny bit. Here's the actual finished version. So hopefully some of the things you can see on here are some of the things that you were thinking about. So let's go through them. First of all, very important, tempo marking. And try and obviously put these at the correct places so that your DAW session, Logic or whatever you're using, everything tallies up at the correct bar, all the information. So you can see that this is 84 BPM. I think this entire cue was just one time tempo. Oh no, it changed his here at A. If you have lots of tempo changes and time signature changes that would take more than a minute to kind of punch in manually, you might want to consider making a MIDI map. We'll go over that at the end, what that is and how to make it. But yeah, tempo. Other things, dynamics. So you see there's quite a lot of dynamics all over the place, telling the musicians what exactly it is that I want. Now, obviously, depending on what you're doing, you might leave it open to interpretation. But if you have something kind of very clear in your mind about what you want, remember that they're sight reading. So the more information that you can give to do with exactly how things should be played will be really, really useful. Just everywhere. Crescendo, back to piano again, little crescendo, up to mezzo piano. Dim poco a poco al niente, which is get quieter little by little until nothing, fades to nothing, basically. So dynamics. Articulation. So you can see that this semiquaver line that was blank before starts off in the violas and then it gets taken by the second violins at the end. It's actually a staccato line. So that's important. How is that going to be played? Because it could be played a little bit more joined up. You could even have slurs on them. Or it could be like super short, like it is in this case. So articulation, especially slurring, is important. So we're going to move over to this bit. If you have a look at this last section, the cellos have got the melody Everyone else is kind of just holding chords. And this is a nice smooth melody. So let's take kind of this bit, I suppose. And you can see that there are slurs over the notes to make them smooth. If I take them all out, you know, the cellist can still play this easily, but it won't be as smooth. It will kind of be like da 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 da. And if you want it smoother than that, you know, it needs to be connected within a bow. But if you did the opposite and think, okay, I need this really smooth, and you did something like this, thinking that that, you know, means that you want this really smooth, that's also going to be hugely problematic, because you're telling the cellist to play this all in one single bow, which actually would be physically impossible. But even if you made it less extreme, maybe you did that. Even that, even though it's possible, would just mean you'd get no projection whatsoever, because the bow would have to move so slowly. And, you know, you wouldn't get a particularly expressive tone. And you can see I want this expressive, espressivo. So what I did is you take a balance of how many notes do you want per bow, or how many beats do you want per bow. So I took a balance that if I did 3 and then in 2s afterwards, that's going to make it smooth enough, but it's going to give the cellist enough freedom to let that bow run kind of fast enough to make this nice and expressive and projected. So think about your slurring. If you want it smooth, you will need slurs, but you don't want to put loads of notes under a slur, potentially. Think about how many beats, and try and split it quite evenly, because obviously the bow goes up one way, goes down the other way. So split the slurring, kind of the beats in each slur, quite evenly as well, if you can. Great, so that's articulation. Also structural things. So you can see here there's a double bar and a rehearsal mark A. You might have a structure, it might be a song. So in that case, you can use kind of like chorus and verse. So let's pretend like a chorus starts here. I can put a double bar in, put some system text on. Something like that, chorus 1. This particular piece is not a song. So there was a point that I just thought, well, it's different from here. This is a nice kind of structural point that we might start from. So I'm going to give it a rehearsal mark and a double bar. Okay, a couple of other things that you might notice. First of all is, you know, the giant time signature, which looks really cool. I mean, you don't have to have that. In this particular case, it's not going to make that much difference. This is most valuable when you're having a session that has a conductor, because, you know, you have nice big time signatures, nice big tempo text, and that means the conductor can see exactly what the time signature and tempo is really carefully. I mean, I'll show you the difference. It's not, in this case, when you don't have a conductor, it's not going to make a huge difference. So here's normal kind of default time signatures, little ones on each stave, and that's absolutely fine. But if you want to have film score style ones, as you can see, there's a little option on Sibelius here to do that. Just Google what it is in MuseScore. I'm sure they can do it in MuseScore if they want to. And it turns it into that. But, you know, either way, it won't come out on the parts anyway. The parts will be normal time signatures. And the other thing is you can see that I have bar numbers every single bar. Now, this can be useful if you have, you know, quite a few bars in your piece, like more than 40, 50 bars. You don't have to have, but it can be useful when you just want people to kind of go to a place really easily, like go to bar 272. I know that's there. I don't have to do any counting. It's not the end of the world if you don't have these. They're kind of an optional extra. If you have, you know, the bar numbers at the beginning of each system, which is the default way of doing it, that will work absolutely fine. But just make sure that these bar numbers are in alignment with what you have in your actual DAW logic session. So you can see this cue actually starts in bar 268. So my first bar in the score is 268. And where the backing audio and the kind of click and MIDI map goes from in my Logic project, this bar, is also going to be 268. So in both the DAW and on my written scores, everybody is in the same place at all times. That's quite important to have a really kind of smooth running session. Once again, I can show you in Sibelius how you do that. You can go into engraving rules, bar numbers, and you can see I've just selected them to have them in every bar. I like to have mine in the center of the bar. That's just me. This is where they are. I've put them underneath the double bass, as you can kind of see here. You can even edit the text style, have them in a box, you know, do whatever it is that you want to do. And anyway, so that's what I've put in. You don't have to do that. It's just something you can do. Okay, parts. Make sure you check your parts, because everybody, well, the scores are kind of for the booth, and the musicians themselves will probably be reading their own parts. So in Sibelius, you can just click here and you can see all of the parts come up here. And there'll be another way to see the parts in MuseScore. Just Google it if you're not sure, but it should be simple enough. So I can have a look and grab it at what my parts look like as well. I can get them all up here. So just check that your parts look really nice and easy to read. Sometimes when you kind of get them in, because, I don't know, sometimes they kind of look a bit like that, like it hasn't formatted it or spaced it out very well. So you just need to kind of sometimes manually just make sure things are spaced out so everyone can read everything as easily as possible. So this is the viola part. That looks all right. I've done, you know, this is already prepared, so I'm hoping they all look all right. Otherwise, this did not have a great session. You can see the name of the part will be on each part. And when you're happy with everything, you're happy with your score, you're happy with all your parts, then export it in PDF, score and all the parts. Once again, I'm sure there's an easy equivalent version in MuseScore to just export them all onto a PDF. I'll do mine in one. Yeah, I'll do it as one file, then it's just one kind of continuous file. I'll show you that. I'll just put these in scores just so I can find them. Export this out. Here we can see, there they are. And you can see that there's my score at the top of the PDF file. And then all my parts underneath. Now, the reason they look different sizes is because in this particular case, my score is in A3. But I suggest just put your score and your parts in A4. You don't need them to be in A3. It's my first violin, second violin, viola, cello, and bass. Now, please do this in good enough time so you can print. I suggest going up there the day before to print. There should be a printer in the library in Kilburn, in the Kilburn campus. Or if you have a printer available to you at home, use that. Even easier. But yes, don't rely on technology. Bring paper copies, please. Great. So that's scores. I briefly want to talk about... Open up a project that actually has